I want to go back to the Craig Thomson issue, because I didn't put the direct question when we were looking at the papers before, but has it got the potential to bring the government down?
Well, look, he can only be forced out of Parliament if he's convicted of something which carries an indictable offence of a year or more. Now, no charges have been laid.
And it's not really headed in that direction. I mean, he's getting himself in deeper and deeper political trouble.
Yeah, two or three weeks ago, someone walked into the Wyong police station from the Health Services Union and made a formal complaint to the police. Last Sunday, the Wyong coppers put out a statement saying not enough there to investigate, right? So the DPP needs a brief from the police to pursue criminal charges. The DPP has always been waiting for the end of this year for the Fair Work Australia investigation to be completed, which when we're unsure of the sort of status of that, whether it be a criminal thing. But, you know, short of that happening and Thomson holding his nerve, and Labor's just got to stick by the guy. I mean, the trouble is it's going to drag Gillard down. I mean, Howard used to stick by...
It just identifies it with the worst excesses of New South Wales.
It looks like she's standing up for sleaze.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very sordid affair, and she's been dragged into the middle of it.
But what do you do? You give up government.
She has to bat on.
And no way to resolve it.
But do you agree, though, Nikki, there's a lot of excitement about this, but can you really see it being the issue that brings the government down?
No, I can't, unless Thomson snaps and decides he can't take it anymore and he's off, or they move to take away his pre-selection from him at a certain point well in advance of the election, in which case he might decide, well, you know, bugger you.
Or as Graham Richardson says, there is more to come. And if that more involves stuff that isn't yet out there and on the media record, then who knows what that is? I mean, tomorrow is another day.
The damage is being done. The damage is ongoing. It's hurting her.
It's almost worse for Gillard to have to stand by him, because if she could cut him loose, like Howard used to stand by people assiduously until it became untenable, like Santo Santoro or something, and then he'd cut him loose.
Yeah, under normal circumstances you could do that.
But she can't. It's a question of not... It's like, what can he lose? He's the chairman of a committee.
Well,
I guess he could lose
that's interesting, because I think... I'd have to check, but didn't he sort of lose that position for a while, stand aside from that position? I'm not... Or there
Economics Committee?
Well, there was pressure for him not to be chairman for a while. But he was reappointed after the election anyhow, and I think...
No, he's been there the whole way through.
The whole time.
Yeah.
They could take that off him.
The other question is why Tony Abbott, uncharacteristically, I think you'd have to say, is not going for the jugular on this occasion. Let's hear from Tony Abbott.
You were asked yesterday whether you would sack him, and you seem to struggle with your answer. With these new reports, would you sack him if he was one of yours?
Well, Lisa, this is a government that has an integrity problem, and everywhere you look, there are new integrity issues.
So knowing all of that, if he was one of yours, would you sack him?
Well, the thing is, I don't know all the details.
Everyone is very surprised that you're not pushing this harder than you are.
Well, I've just said what I think needs to be said.
So why is that? Is it because one of their own, Senator Mary Jo Fisher, has charges hanging over her head?
I think it's a little bit to do with that, but it's a precedent. Abbott can't afford to lose anyone either. Now, what if wake up in the papers tomorrow and there's one of his MPs has been done using a credit card for something, or something similar? And if Abbott's already said Thomson must resign, by his own president, he's one seat away from government. So I think he's got to be a bit careful.
He doesn't lose anyone either.
But also, once you call for resignation, there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know what else is out there. So I think he's best to wait and see how the story plays out before he takes that final step. Turnbull made that mistake with Godwin Gretsch, where he went out immediately and called for Rudd and Swan's resignation, and it all, blew up in his face. And caused a lot of damage.
It's prudent. That's right.
It might be prudent, but the government seems to be assuming that Tony Abbott's about to do that, I think. But let's listen to Craig Emerson, the Trade Minister, on television earlier this morning.
In May, charges were laid and it became public in July. Now, there's a standard where Mr Abbott had that period between May and July, said nothing whatsoever, and we have never called for the resignation of this particular MP. The standard that Mr Abbott would want to apply is that regardless of whether there is any criminal allegation against a Member of Parliament, that Member of Parliament who is the subject of allegations as yet unsubstantiated and may never be substantiated because Mr Thomson has denied them, should resign. All right, Mr Abbott, for once, just for once, apply the same standard to your own team. But you haven't. You haven't, because all this is about is what you're inferring, Peter, and that is political opportunism.
Except that, of course, he hasn't called for the resignation, and he was, of course, they're talking about Mary Jo Fisher. But she was charged in May, and it became public in July.
Yeah, but he has called on Julia Gillard to say, when did you know all this about Thomson, and when did the Labor Party paid his settlement fees, and what did you know when? Well, I think it's a fair point by Emerson to throw back. I think it's entirely legitimate in the context.
But it is also a different situation with Mary Jo than it is with Craig Thomson. You have an incident with Mary Jo for whatever reason. She obviously had a bit of a snap, and there are lots of documented stories about women and shoplifting where it's a bit more complicated than that. But this is a very different situation where you've got, misuse of union funds and forgeries alleged and theft of
all those sorts of things are unproven. So I guess the thing about Mary Jo Fisher is she will have her day in court, and that's the important part here.
Does this go back to Kevin Rudd? I mean, he was Prime Minister when these allegations were first published. Did Rudd do the due diligence involved? I mean, Thomson was pre-selected when Rudd was Prime Minister. So
they should have asked more
how far
questions.
back do you want to take this?
Well,
he was relying on the Sussex Street branch.
On the assurances he was given.
Took the assurances in